Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Mm.
We are really glad you were here with us today
Yeah.
because we're about to unpack a story that, frankly, um, it sounds like it was written by a screenwriter who had way too much coffee.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, like they couldn't decide on a genre.
Mm-hmm.
It is a story about the fragility of history,
Mm.
the very legal definition of honor, and how a guy who used to perform magic tricks in shopping center parking lots ended up literally rewriting federal law.
Yeah, it is one of those narratives where if you pitched it as a fictional movie, the studio would just send it back.
They'd say it's too much.
Exactly. It's like, tone it down. Nobody is going to believe this character actually exists.
Right. And we're looking at a pretty thick stack of sources today. We've got articles from 5280 magazine, some deep entries from Wikipedia, and perhaps most interestingly, a portfolio of internal documents regarding the publishing and sale of military history books.
Mm-hmm.
And at the center of all this paper is one man, Claude Douglas Sterner.
Known to the world as Doug.
Doug Sterner.
Yeah.
And to really set the stage for you listening right now, you kind of need to visualize a Venn diagram.
I love that framing.
Yeah, so in one circle, you have a hardened Vietnam combat veteran,
Yeah.
a man who has seen the absolute worst of war.
Right.
Then in the second circle, you have a traveling ventriloquist and like a gospel magician.
Which is quite the pivot.
It really is. And then in the third circle, you have a self-taught computer coder and just an obsessive historian.
And right in that tiny, weird little sliver where all three of those circles overlap, that is Doug Sterner.
That's him.
That is exactly him. And our mission for this deep dive today is to explore how that very specific overlap of skills, so, the discipline of the soldier, the flair of the showman, and the patience of the coder, how all that led to two massive things.
Right.
The Stolen Valor Act and the Hall of Valor database.
And we're going to get deep into the weeds on this because it's not just a biography. I mean, it is a look at how we as a society remember things.
Yes.
Because I think you and I, and probably you listening at home, we assume the government keeps track of who won what medal, right?
Of course we do.
We assume there's this master list in a vault somewhere in the Pentagon.
That is the assumption. But the reality, as we're going to find out today, is much, much messier. The reality is that for a really long time, the only thing standing between a hero being remembered and a hero being completely forgotten was Doug Sterner sitting at a computer in Pueblo, Colorado.
It's wild. So let's start at the very beginning. Who is this guy? The sources say he was born in Kalispell, Montana in 1950.
Right.
And looking at the notes on his early life, it seems like that split personality, the historian versus the performer, that was there from day one.
It really was. On one side, you have this introverted, scholarly kid. By his sophomore year of high school, he isn't just reading military history, he's actually trying to write it.
He wrote a novel, right?
Yeah, he writes a full-length World War II novel called The Hero. It's about 3 soldiers earning the Medal of Honor.
Which is incredible foreshadowing. He's obsessed with the mechanics of valor before he's even old enough to enlist.
Exactly. But then you have the other side of him. In 8th grade, he borrows a ventriloquist dummy from a friend.
As one does.
Right. And he doesn't just play with it, he practices. He masters it. He does his first public performance shortly after. So you have this performative streak, this underlying need to be on stage to capture an audience, to project a voice. And that's developing right alongside this quiet, solitary obsession with military citations.
And usually, people pick a lane. You're the history nerd in the library, or you're the theater kid on stage.
Right.
But Sterner just decided, why not both?
Exactly.
But reality hits in 1969. He enlisted in the Army. And this is a really crucial part of the story because later on, when we talk about him hunting down fake heroes and pushing for the Stolen Valor Act,
Yeah.
we need to know, is this guy the real deal?
Oh, he is absolutely the real deal. And his path through the military is fascinating because he was part of a very specific, very intense program known as the Shake and Bake School.
Shake and bake. I've heard that term thrown around in Vietnam movies, but break it down for us. It sounds culinary.
It's dark military humor, really. The official name was the Non-Commissioned Officer Candidate Course.
Oh.
But the troops called it Shake and Bake because it was instant. The Vietnam War was just grinding through junior leaders, sergeants, and corporals at a terrifying rate. The Army desperately needed replacements, and they needed them fast.
So they couldn't wait for guys to gain 4 or 5 years of normal experience to become sergeants.
Exactly. So they took high-aptitude recruits, put them through an accelerated, high-intensity training program, and spit them out as Sergeant C5s in just a fraction of the normal time.
So you're a 19 or 20-year-old kid. Suddenly you have stripes on your sleeve, and you are in charge of a squad in a literal war zone.
Yes.
That seems like a recipe for disaster, or at least immense pressure.
It is a massive amount of pressure. You have to prove yourself to older, more experienced privates who might resent you for just showing up with stripes.
I didn't even think about that.
Oh, yeah, the resentment was real. And Sterner didn't just survive it, he excelled. He graduated as a sergeant and deployed to Vietnam in 1970 as a combat engineer.
Let's pause on combat engineer for a second, because in pop culture, we usually see the infantry kicking down doors.
Yeah.
What is the engineer doing?
The engineer is the one making sure the infantry can actually get to the door.
Okay.
Their motto is essentially first in. They are out there clearing minefields, blowing up obstacles, building bridges while people are actively shooting at them and demolishing enemy bunkers.
Wow.
It is dirty, dangerous, highly technical work.
It's construction and destruction in equal measure.
Precisely. And Sterner served 2 consecutive tours from 1970 to 1972. And look at the units he was attached to. The 25th Infantry, the 14th Engineer Combat Battalion, the 101st Airborne, the 1st Cavalry.
Those are legendary divisions.
They are. He saw a lot of the country and he saw a lot of action.
And the receipts. The medals.
2 Bronze Stars for meritorious service and an Army Commendation Medal for valor.
Okay, so that solidly establishes his credibility.
Yeah.
Fast forward 40 years, when Doug Sterner is sitting in front of a congressional committee talking about the sanctity of military honor,
Mm-hmm.
nobody can tell him he doesn't understand the cost.
Right.
He has real skin in the game.
He has walked the walk. And I think that moral authority is essential to everything he does later on. He isn't some outsider critiquing the system. He's a veteran trying to protect the legacy of the men he served with.
So he comes home in 1972.
Mm.
The war is winding down. He has the medals. He has the rank. You'd expect him to maybe join the VFW, get a quiet government job, maybe go into construction, since he was an engineer.
That would be the expected path, yeah.
Instead, he pivots back to that other circle in our Venn diagram.
The showman.
Exactly.
Yeah, after a brief and somewhat turbulent stint working as a guard at a Montana prison, where, by the way, he actually got cited for his conduct during some prison incidents, which shows he still had that take charge attitude.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he and his wife, Pam, decide to just hit the road.
And when you say hit the road, you don't mean a 2-week vacation.
No, I mean a total lifestyle change. From 1977 to 1985, they lived in a converted bus. They branded themselves the Cher family.
The Cher family.
Yeah, they traveled from California to Alaska, performing at churches, schools, and community centers.
Doing what exactly?
Gospel, magic, ventriloquism, balloon sculpture. They even recorded albums of original music. It was a full traveling variety show.
It is such a jarring image, the hardened combat engineer with the ventriloquist dummy.
It really is.
But there is a specific detail in the 5280 magazine profile that I just can't get out of my head. It's about how he marketed these shows. Because you can't just show up in a small town and expect people to flock to a gospel magic show.
No, you need a hook. And this is where Sterner proves he understands the attention economy long before the internet even existed.
Yeah.
To drum up publicity for a church show, Sterner would go to a local shopping center or a mall parking lot, and he would have himself put in a straitjacket.
A literal straitjacket.
A regulation, heavy canvas straitjacket. Then he would be hoisted upside down by a crane dangling over the asphalt, usually 50 or 60 feet in the air.
Hanging upside down. In a straitjacket.
Yeah.
In a parking lot.
Yes. And he would escape. It was a classic Houdini stunt.
Why? I mean, obviously for attention, but what does this tell us about him as a person?
It tells us he is completely fearless. But more importantly, it tells us he knows that if you want people to listen to your message, whether that message is the gospel or later on the history of the Medal of Honor, you first have to get them to stop walking and look at you.
You have to make them pay attention.
Exactly. You have to be willing to be a little crazy. That willingness to hang upside down from a crane to make a point, that is the exact same energy he later brings to fighting the Pentagon bureaucracy.
That is a brilliant connection. He isn't a dusty academic hiding away in the archives. He's a brawler who knows how to work a crowd.
Very much so.
So how do we get from the straitjacket to the database? What was the catalyst that turned the magician back into the historian?
The shift happens in the mid-'80s. The Sterners finally settled down in Pueblo, Colorado. It's a steel town, very blue-collar.
Okay.
Doug is working as a property manager for HUD-subsidized housing. He's still using his entertainment skills to organize events for the neighborhood kids. But in 1993, he's planning a 4th of July event at the local zoo, and he stumbles across a piece of data that literally changes everything.
A data anomaly.
Exactly. He realizes that Pueblo, Colorado, this modest working-class town, listed 4 living Medal of Honor recipients as residents.
Is that a lot? like contextually?
It is a massive statistical outlier. At the time, no other city in America had 4 living recipients of the nation's highest award.
And this sparks the historian in
It
it.
sparks the promoter in him, too.
Oh, right.
He and Pam launch a campaign. They want to rebrand the city entirely. They lobbied the city council to change the motto from the Steel City to America's Home of Heroes.
I love that. It gives the town a new identity, a real sense of pride.
And it worked beautifully. They organized massive events. In 1995, following the Oklahoma City bombing, they brought in Medal of Honor recipients to honor the first responders. They had heroes visiting every single school in the county.
That's amazing.
But here is where the friction starts. Sterner is trying to write bios for these guests. He wants to introduce them properly with their full citations, and he realizes he cannot find the information anywhere.
Wait, they're Medal of Honor recipients. Shouldn't that be public record?
It is public record, but it wasn't public access. That is a
Mhm.
crucial distinction. The citations were buried in dusty filing cabinets in the National Archives, or scattered across different military yearbooks, or lost in the massive fire at the Record Center in St. Louis back in the 70s.
Right, the St. Louis fire that destroyed so much.
Exactly. There was no Google for this back then. There was no Central Department of Defense website where you could just type in a name and see Silver Star 1968.
That seems like a glaring oversight for an organization as big and well-funded as the military.
It was. It was a huge gap in the market. And Sterner looked at that gap and basically said, well, if the Army won't build it, I will.
And this is the part that impresses me the most. He didn't just go out and hire a software developer. He became one.
He was nearly 50 years old. In 1998, he enrolled at Pueblo Community College. He took a crash course in computer information systems. He graduated with a 4.0 GPA, learned HTML and database management, and built homeofheroes.com entirely from scratch.
This is the ultimate DIY project at 50.
Yeah, it started small, but it exploded. Millions of visitors. It became the de facto reference site for military awards because literally nobody else had this data online.
Wow.
Eventually, the sheer maintenance of the website became too much for one guy, so he sold the site, but he kept control of the data. Today, that data lives on as the Military Times Hall of Valor.
Let's talk about the scale of this Hall of Valor, because I think
Yeah.
when you say database, to most people, they picture an Excel spreadsheet with a few hundred names.
No, this is a monumental archive. Sterner has identified and cataloged over 300,000 recipients of awards above the Bronze Star.
300,000.
Yes. He estimates there are about 450,000 total in U.S. history, so he has captured a huge majority of them. He has the full digitized citations for every Medal of Honor, every Navy Cross, every Air Force Cross.
And he's typing these in by hand.
Largely, yes. He is combing through general orders, which are these incredibly dry, dense military documents listing promotions and awards, and manually extracting the data.
That sounds exhausting.
It is tedious, eye-straining work. It is the kind of work that requires that obsessive trait we mentioned earlier.
But why does it matter? I want to play devil's advocate here for a second. Okay, so we have a giant list. That's nice for historians, right? But does it actually impact real people living today?
That is the essential question, and the answer is a resounding yes. And the best way to explain why is to tell you the story of Mark DeVille.
This was in the 5280 magazine piece.
Yeah.
It is a crazy story.
It really is. So rewind to November 23rd, 1984. Mark DeVille is a young Army private. He is stationed in the DMZ, the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea.
Which is famously often called the quietest war in the world.
Right, until it isn't. On that specific day, a Soviet defector runs across the border trying to escape to the south. North Korean soldiers chase him, actually crossing the line. Suddenly, you have a full-blown firefight.
In 1984.
Yes, it was a major international incident. DeVille and his squad immediately engaged the North Koreans. They suppressed the advance, saved the defector, and secured the border. It was intense, close-quarters combat.
And DeVille is recognized for this.
The Army authorized a Silver Star for him.
Which is huge.
It's the third highest award for valor in combat. It is a massive deal. But then the bureaucracy happened.
Let me guess, the paperwork got lost.
The paperwork was finally processed in 2016 years later. But by then, DeVille was a civilian. The Army had completely lost track of his address, so the medal, the citation, the recognition, it all just sat in a file drawer somewhere.
That's tragic.
DeVille went about his life for decades having absolutely no idea he was a decorated hero.
He didn't know it all.
He had no clue until 2013. He's sitting at his computer, maybe feeling nostalgic, and he Googles his own name. And up pops a link to Doug Sterner's database. He clicks it, and there it is, Mark DeVille Silver Star.
I cannot even imagine that moment. He must have thought it was a prank.
He did. He actually tracked down Sterner's personal phone number and called him up. He said, "I think you have a mistake on your website."
And what did Sterner say?
Sterner pulled the source document, because he always keeps the receipts, and read the general order directly to him over the phone. He told him, "No, Mark, you earned this."
That gives me chills. It's like finding out you won the lottery 10 years ago and you just never checked the ticket.
Because of that single database entry, DeVille was able to contact the Pentagon. In 2014, he finally had that silver star pinned on his chest. He reunited with the guys from his squad. That closure, that validation of his service. None of that would have happened if Doug Sterner hadn't spent his evenings typing names into a computer in Pueblo.
It really highlights that history isn't static.
Yeah.
It is fragile.
Very fragile.
If Sterner hadn't caught that piece of paper, Mark DeVille's Valor would have technically existed, but it wouldn't have been real to the world.
Exactly. And this brings us to a major point of tension in the story, because you have to ask yourself, why is a former ventriloquist doing this? Why isn't the Department of Defense doing this?
Right. And Sterner tried to get them to do it, didn't he?
He spent years lobbying them. In 2007, he pushed for legislation that would force the DoD to digitize these records. The Pentagon's response was essentially, "It's too hard, it can't be done. The records are too scattered."
It can't be done. Meanwhile, a guy in Colorado is literally doing it on a PC.
Exactly. And that was Sterner's exact argument when he testified before a House subcommittee in 2012. He effectively shamed them. He pointed out that private organizations and hobbyists were doing the job the government refused to do.
Good for him.
Yeah, and while the military has since launched some limited databases, Sterner's Hall of Valor is still widely considered the most comprehensive and user-friendly source out there.
But here's the flip side to all of this. A comprehensive list of everyone who did earn a medal is also the ultimate weapon against anyone who didn't.
Yes. And this pivots us to the most controversial part of Sterner's legacy, the Stolen Valor Act. This is where his advocacy really hits the national stage.
We hear that term stolen valor a lot on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, people screaming at guys in airports for wearing their berets wrong. But where did the actual legal concept start?
It started surprisingly with a college term paper.
A term paper?
Yeah, in 2004, Pam Sterner Doug's wife was finishing her degree at CSU Pueblo. She wrote a political science paper arguing that imposters claiming military awards were defrauding the public and dishonoring the service of real veterans. She used the term stolen valor, which she actually borrowed with permission from an author named B.G. Burkett.
So Pam writes the paper. But how does it get from a classroom in Pueblo to the White House?
Because the Sterners are a team. They didn't just turn the paper in for a grade and move on. They took that paper to their local congressman, John Salazar.
Okay.
They lobbied him. They used those communication skills Doug honed as a performer to explain why this mattered so much. They spent 2 years fighting for this. And in 2006, the Stolen Valor Act was passed and signed into law by President George W. Bush.
What did that first version of the law actually do?
It was very broad. It made it a federal crime to falsely claim verbally or in writing that you had received a military decoration.
So if you just stood up in a bar and said, "I have a Medal of Honor," and you were a criminal.
Yes.
Even if you didn't get any money for it. Even if you were just bragging to look cool.
Yes. And that is exactly where they ran into the Constitution,
The First Amendment.
specifically the right to free speech. This all came to a head in the Supreme Court case United States v. Alvarez in 2012.
Walk us through that case. Who was Alvarez?
Xavier Alvarez was a local water board official in California.
Yeah.
A real piece of work, frankly. He introduced himself at a public meeting by saying, "I'm a retired Marine of 25 years. I retired in 2001. Back in 1987, I was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor."
And let me guess, none of that was true.
Not a single word. He never served a day in his life. He was prosecuted under the Sterner's law, but his lawyers argued that the government cannot ban speech just because it's a lie.
That sounds somewhat counterintuitive, though. Why would the law protect lies?
The argument is about the slippery slope. It's a fundamental First Amendment debate.
Right.
If the government has the power to put you in jail just for lying about a medal, what else can they put you in jail for lying about? Can they jail you for lying about your age? For lying about your golf handicap? For lying about your political beliefs?
I see. So it's about limiting the government's power to be the absolute police of truth.
Exactly. And the Supreme Court agreed with that logic. In a 6-3 decision, they struck down the 2006 law. They ruled that lying about yourself is protected speech unless it causes specific, tangible harm like fraud.
That must have been an absolute gut punch for the Sterners. Weren't they in the courtroom for that?
They were present at the hearing, yeah. And for most people, that would be the end of the road. The Supreme Court says, no, you pack up and you go home.
Right. But remember, Doug Sterner is a guy who hangs upside down from cranes. He doesn't quit.
So how did they fix it? How did they get around the Supreme Court?
They pivoted. They went back to work with Congress to write a new version, the Stolen Valor Act of 2013. And this time, they narrowed the scope to exactly match the court's ruling on fraud.
Oh, so?
The new law makes it illegal to fraudulently claim these awards specifically with the intent to obtain money, property, or other tangible benefits.
Oh, okay. So bragging at a bar to impress a date, legal. You're a jerk, but you're not a federal criminal.
Correct.
But lying to get a VA loan or a government contract or a job preference, illegal.
Exactly. They attached a tangible consequence to the lie. And that version sailed through. It passed the House and Senate almost unanimously and was signed into law in 2013.
And this is where the database really comes full circle. Because to prove someone is lying to get a benefit, you need to know the truth.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The Hall of Valor database became the primary enforcement mechanism for the new law.
When the FBI investigates these fraud cases now, or when a journalist wants to vet a politician's military claims, the very first thing they do is check Sterner's work. He built the tool that actually makes the law enforceable.
It is an incredibly powerful legacy. But reading through the 5280 profile, I actually got the sense that Doug is kind of tired of the stolen valor stuff.
He is. He calls it a detour. He told the reporter it's not exciting. It's just, oh no, here's another idiot taking up my time.
That's hilarious.
See, Sterner doesn't want to be the policeman. He wants to be the storyteller. He wants to focus on the valor, not the stolen part.
And that brings us to the final piece of this puzzle, really, the books. Because he hasn't just built a massive database, he has written an entire library.
It is staggering, the volume of work. He has over 80 books in print, more than 35,000 pages of text.
35,000 pages.
Yeah, his series, United States Military Heroes, consists of these massive encyclopedic reference volumes.
But what I found fascinating in the source material wasn't just the writing itself, it was the selling. We have access to his Hero Books portfolio, which is basically his personal sales manual.
Yes, this is where Doug the Hustler comes out. He isn't sitting back waiting for a publisher to market him. He is out there cold calling.
We have his actual scripts here. He advises calling libraries and bookstores specifically between 10:00 a.m. and 11:30 a.m.
Very specific. Why that exact window?
He says it's after the morning rush but before the lunch break. It's the sweet spot where a librarian might actually pick up the phone
That's smart.
and listen to the script for the acquisitions librarian.
Let's hear it.
He says, quote, "I notice your current section for military history is a bit thin."
Oh, ouch. Negging the librarian.
It's brilliant sales tactics, though. He creates a problem, your collection is incomplete, and then he immediately offers the solution. He pitches his books not just as reading material, but as heirlooms and library-quality hardcovers.
He really leans into the physical permanence of the books.
He does. And he specifically targets niches, too. Like,
Yeah.
if he's calling a town near a naval base, he pitches his Navy Medical Corps book.
And my favorite part is how he handles rejection in these calls.
Mm.
If they say no, he doesn't just hang up. He asks, do you know any other local shops or collectors who are currently looking for military history books?
He always looks for the side door. He never leaves empty-handed.
I think this sales manual reveals something really deep about him. He believes these stories, these citations of bravery, they need to be physically present in the world.
Right.
He wants that heavy hardcover book sitting on a shelf in a small town so that some 14-year-old kid, maybe a kid just like he was, can pull it down and read about a local hero.
He's trying to plant the seeds for the next generation.
He views himself as a conduit, a guardian, really. Yeah. Whether it's digitizing the data so Mark DeVille can find his silver star or selling a hardcover book to a librarian in Iowa, the goal is exactly the same. Ensure the memory survives the soldier.
So when we step back and look at the whole picture here, the combat engineer, the ventriloquist, the coder, the lobbyist, the salesman, what is the big takeaway for us?
I think the takeaway is about the immense power of individual agency. We so often wait for the system to fix things. We wait for the DOD to organize their own records. We wait for the Supreme Court to define what honor means.
Right. We assume someone else is handling it.
But Sterner didn't wait. He saw a broken system, a massive hole in history, and he just filled it himself using whatever tools he had, even if those tools were self-taught coding and money he made from magic shows.
It raises a really interesting question about the future of history, too. As we move further and further into the digital age, we generate so much data. Who is actually going to keep track of it all?
That is the scary part. Digital history is in many ways even more fragile than paper. Files corrupt, links rot. Without a curator, without a citizen historian like Doug Sterner obsessively checking the receipts, the truth can just disappear.
And on the flip side, without that curated truth, lies can flourish unchecked.
Precisely. It takes effort to maintain the truth.
I want to leave you with a thought to mull over today. We talked about the legal definition of stolen valor, that it's only a crime if there is a literal price tag attached to it. If you lie for money, you go to jail. But if you lie for attention, you are protected by free speech.
Right, the Alvarez ruling.
But in the age of social media, isn't attention a form of currency?
Oh, absolutely.
If you lie about your military service to get likes, to get followers, to build a digital brand, isn't that a form of profit? And as we live more of our lives entirely online, will we eventually need to rethink that legal distinction?
That is a very provocative question. Is clout the new money? And does the law need to catch up to the internet?
Something to think about next time you're scrolling. A huge thank you to you for joining us on this deep dive into the Guardian of Glory.
It was a pleasure to unpack this one.
See you in the next deep dive.